All right, everyone, welcome to AP Precalc. We're going to get started with section 1.1. We're going to split this lesson up into 3 parts. The first lesson today is going to be on what's called input and output. All right, let's get started with some basic definitions of both input and output. Input is what we call the independent variable, also known as just the x value. If we're using function notation, it's the inside of the function. So whatever's in the parentheses is our input or our x value. The output is our dependent variable, also known simply as the y value. Or sometimes we refer to it as f of x. Right? So if it's the inside, it's the x. If it's the whole thing, it's the output or the y value. Now let's take a look at an example here. It says find the output value of the function, the y value of the function, when the input or the x coordinate is 3. And so what we're going to do is anywhere that we see an x on either side of the equation, we're going to replace it with a 3. So the left-hand side will just say f of 3. The right-hand side, anywhere that there was an x, we're going to put parentheses. And then inside of those parentheses, we're going to plug that 3 in once I have this equation set up here. All right, so in the first and the second parentheses, all of the x's became 3s. Now, all we have to do to evaluate this is follow order of operations. So squaring 3, that's 3 times 3, so 9, plus we have another 3 times 3, so also 9, minus 4. And if we add and then subtract, that gives us 14. All right, 14 is our output value. All right, think of this as a coordinate point. 3 was the x coordinate, and we plugged it in. It was our input, and we got out 14, which is the y coordinate for this function here. All right, second example, we're going to find the input value of the function, or the x coordinate this time, when the output or the y value is 3. But here we're not going to plug it in for x. We're going to replace f of x on this problem with a 3. And if we do that, we get 3 equals 3x minus 12. So to solve for x, all we have to do is add 12 to both sides to get 15. And then 3x on the right. And then to undo the multiplying by 3, we would divide both sides by 3 to give us that x is 5. All right, now we're going to look at a graph, and we're going to try to figure out the value for f of 0. So because 0 is in the parentheses, that means 0 is our x coordinate. And so let's go to our x-axis. X is 0 on the y-axis right here. So that's when x is 0. And so if we go to the point down here, well, that's the coordinate point 0, -3. And so our output value would just be -3. That's our answer here. So f of 0 gives us -3. Up next, now we're going to find when f of x is 0. So that's our y coordinate of 0. And so if we're on the y-axis, y is 0 actually on the x-axis. And so that's going to occur right here at x equals -2. There's a y value of 0. But also over here to the right, there's an x coordinate of +2 when y is 0. And so our answers here would just be x equals -2 and x equals +2. All right, so now we want to apply this to a table question. So part A says to find f of 2. Again, that's inside, so that is our x coordinate from the table below. So I'm going to look at the column where that's labeled x and look for when x is 2, so that occurs right here. But it's asking again for the y value or the f of x value. Well, the f of x value is 4 when x is 2. And so for part A, we're just going to write 4. Part B says to find f of x equals 2. So again, this is the y value now that we're given. So now we're looking in the f of x column, and we're looking for when f of x is 2. We want to know what x coordinate produces that output value of 2. Well, that would be 0. And so f of 0 is equal to 2. Or we could just write x equals 0. All right, lastly, we're going to tackle a calculator question here. So first, we're going to find f of -2 using a calculator, and then we're going to solve f of x equals 2. So for part A, we're going to replace all the x's with -2s, and then use our calculator to simplify. But I'm going to switch over to Desmos here. All right, so now that I'm in Desmos, I have the function graphed here, which we don't need this function graphed, but I just want to be able to refer to it. However, if you do graph the function, I can just click right there, and I could get the output value from that. So that's one way we could get the evaluate part A, which was to find f of -2. We could graph the function and then just click on the coordinate point, and it'll give us the y value. The other way to do this, though, I'm going to click on the keyboard here. I'm going to click on the division symbol. And so what that is going to do now is it creates a nice fraction as we work through this problem. All right, so I'm going to use the keyboard. Again, you can click on the screen as well. That would work. But I'm going to replace all of the x's in parentheses with that -2. All right, and then I'm going to click the squared button on the screen there, plus 3, and then in parentheses -2, and then -2. And then in the denominator, again, plug in that -2 in parentheses, and then take away 4. And it's just going to give us the answer of 2. So we could do either option. Right? We could graph the function and then click on the coordinate point. But you got to get it just perfect, or else it'll be off by a little bit, right? Or you can just go ahead and plug in the -2, and it'll just give you the answer. All right, so that's part A. Now, part B was asking us to solve when the function is equal to 2. So again, we can look where there's a y value of 2 by just clicking points, right, and try to get really close. But sometimes that may not be the easiest. But I can see here it's going to be when x is 3 and when x is -2. That's when we have a y value of 2. But let's see if there's another way to do that. So I'm going to go in front of that first function and just type out 2 equals, or I could have put it at the end, equals 2. And notice it puts those vertical lines. And I can see, okay, that's going through the point -2, and it's also going through the point 3. All right, so we can do it that way. Or the other option is to graph the function, like we already did at the beginning, but also to graph y equals 2. And that, I think, is a little bit easier to see. And it'll automatically put points there and just highlight for us what those coordinate points are. And so our answer to part B, again, is x equals 3 and x equals -2. All right, guys, hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, stay flawless.